Hi, I'm Steve, and welcome to another down-home clean carnivore video. In the last episode, I told you that I didn't expect to write a book, or I didn't at least set out to write a book as such. I thought that I was simply trying to lose weight, but along the way, I realized that I was collecting chapters. Today, I'd like to tell you what else that I never expected. This isn't the book that I thought that I was writing. In fact, I remember a college professor who told the class that you don't know what you think until you write it down. And at first, that idea clashed with me, and I resisted it with everything. But eventually, I realized that he was telling the truth. When people hear the title Born Fat and Skinny at 75, they assume that the book is about carnivore, and they expect me to talk about beef, bacon, eggs, intermittent fasting, and weight loss. And yes, all of those things are in the book because they're a part of my story. But as I began gathering the chapters together, I realized that they were just supporting characters and not the main character. The real story turned out to be much bigger. I found myself writing about a little boy who carried more than extra pounds. He carried embarrassment and self-consciousness and the quiet feeling that everyone else seemed to know something that he didn't. I can still remember comparing myself to other little boys and wondering why they could run so easily, why did their clothes fit differently, and why they seemed so comfortable in their own skin. At the time, I thought that the problem was simply that I was overweight. Looking back, I realized that the weight was only a part of the story. The deeper story was what obesity whispered into my heart about who I was. And then another chapter surprised me. I began writing about something I eventually called Seeking WB. At first, WB stood for Wheat Belly, and the book changed the direction of my life. But as I kept reading and learning, WB took on another meaning: wrong beliefs. I discovered that nearly every breakthrough in my health was preceded by the abandonment of belief that simply wasn't true. Calories in and calories out. Whole grains are healthy for everyone. Fat makes you fat. You need to eat every 2 or 3 hours. High cholesterol automatically means that you've got poor health and are in danger of a heart attack. Weight loss is simply about what? Willpower. After reading Wheat Belly, WB was everywhere that I looked. He was following the same bad advice that I had. My desire to tell him the truth and to help him grew rapidly. And as I look back over my life, I realized that I had accepted a whole collection of ideas that simply weren't true. I believed that I lacked willpower. I believed that I was destined to struggle with food forever. I believed that hunger was a pang that controlled me instead of a physical sensation that I could control. Those beliefs stayed with me for years because I'd never experienced anything different. And when I changed the way I ate, those beliefs fell like standing dominoes. One by one, they lost their grip because reality kept contradicting them. Every day I lived differently became another piece of evidence that perhaps the story that I had believed about myself wasn't the true story after all. I found myself writing about stewardship instead of calories. I wrote about margin instead of meal plans, peace instead of pounds. A freezer full of vacuum-sealed beef became a lesson in preparation, and the sunrise became a lesson in gratitude. What I thought was a dead laptop became a lesson in adaptability. Swept by spontaneity, a road trip taught me a lesson about carrying the mission wherever I went, and none of those experiences looked important at the time. They only became chapters when I looked back and reflected on the whole. That's when I understood something I hadn't seen before. The carnivore lifestyle changed my body, surely, but it also slowed me down enough to notice what God had been doing all along. I began paying attention to ordinary moments that I would have hurried past before. Conversations became richer. Problems taught me perseverance that proved itself successful in resolutions. Even interruptions turned valuable, and I saw them as a part of the grand plan. And what started as a book about a way of eating evolved into a book about transformation. And as I transformed and changed my thinking, the book grew with me out of necessity. The food simply opened the first door. And on the other side of that door, I found hope, clarity, purpose, stewardship, and a peace I didn't even know that I was missing. That's why I'm enjoying writing this book so much. I'm not inventing stories. I'm rediscovering my own life. I'm looking back over experiences that once seemed ordinary and realizing that they were shaping me all along. In the next episode, I'm going to share one of my favorite discoveries. It's something that I call the shelf in the back of the barn. It's where ideas go when they're not ready to become chapters yet. And surprisingly, some of the best chapters in this book began there. Until then, remember this. Sometimes we're so busy with our lives that we don't recognize the story God is writing until we pause long enough to look back.